Ian?
Let's try again.
Okay. Send a request. Oh my God. Speak. Hello, everybody. We're just waiting for Daniel to come in. He'll be here in 2 seconds. To find him in the long list. Thank you all for joining me today. It's really great to have lots of followers. I hope lots of BFAMI people come in. Daniel, how lovely to see you. Good morning. How are you?
The miracles of technology.
The miracles of technology, and all I can say is, hello everybody, welcome to BFAMI Instagram Live, and it's just wonderful to see you. And I'm here now with Daniel Hermann, who's just arrived, so I'm going to start, and I'm hoping that you're all going to have a wonderful interview and enjoy being with us today. For anybody that doesn't know, BFAMI stands for British Friends of the Art Museums of Israel, and we are an organization that raises funds to support educational programs in 9 museums in Israel. So not just the very large ones, the Tel Aviv Museum and the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, but also lots of little ones all over the country. And so we are hoping that we get lots of followers and that everyone is going to have a wonderful morning with us today. So I'd like to introduce you all to Daniel Hermann, who is the Curator of Modern and Contemporary Projects at the National Gallery in London. Daniel leads on relating the national collection of over 2,000 paintings to the world of contemporary art and culture through exhibitions, displays and commissions, residencies, research and interpretation. So Daniel, you do an awful lot, but first of all, I'd like to ask you about your background. Could you tell us a little bit about how you started? And I understand that you did your MA in Art History, German Language and Linguistics at Hamburg University, and then you did a fantastic postgraduate degree at the Warburg House, which is Abby Warburg's original library and research institute, also there, and there's a lovely picture of it now. So please do explain, because it looks like quite a complicated master's that you did. What did you specialize in?
Well, thank you so much, Cathy, for having me. It's a total pleasure to talk to you and with the BFAMI members. I've been extremely lucky. I'm an art historian. I started in Germany, where I was born, and I worked my way into the art scene and into the art institutions here in Britain, and now I'm at a wonderful place. And of course, we just reopened the National Gallery yesterday, so I'm very lucky that I get to talk to you, and I feel very privileged. What I would love to do is, over the next couple of minutes, give you a bit of an idea of what I am currently doing at the National Gallery, and a bit of an overview of the trajectory that I had. I did indeed start at the University of Hamburg with a fairly traditional study of art history. It was a way of studying that is slightly different from the United Kingdom. I studied for roughly 7 years, and the postgraduate part of my studies, or what would be the postgraduate in Britain, did indeed take place also at the Warburg House in Hamburg.
Which is this lovely image that I've put up for you behind.
Absolutely. What you can see right now on the screen, I've actually spent a lot of time there, is the original Kulturwissenschaftliche Bibliothek Warburg, which is the Library of Cultural Sciences, as it was called. And A.B. Warburg is a very formative figure for myself, but also in the history and historiography of art. Here was a German-Jewish art historian who really looked at art from the point of view of a history of ideas. Warburg was interested in looking at the afterlife of images, looking at the the ideas that connect images, art, artwork, and the making of art throughout time, from the Renaissance into the present. And I feel very lucky that, at least in my own small ways, my work of working with the National Gallery and having worked with historic artworks and connecting them to the present and to the practice of contemporary art now is very much interested in a similar thing.
There's a Warburg Institute in London as well.
That is correct.
Yeah, I think they were running out of funds at some point. I hope that's still okay.
They always need more support, and they deserve it because they're doing fantastic work. The Warburg Institute in London actually was founded when Warburg's colleagues in face of persecution by the Nazis in Germany took and packed the entire library and moved it over to London into the immigration, which became its new home, and founded a wonderful and extremely important research institute. After the war, the Warburg House in Germany was reinstituted. It was rebuilt, and it is now a postgraduate research institute of
fantastic. And I remember actually using it when I was an undergraduate, and they have boxes of images from everything you can imagine, that you can research and be useful.
It is one of the best libraries in the world, one of the most fascinating places in the world, and I'm very, very glad that I was able to be a part of it in a small way.
Yeah, fantastic. So what I want to ask you is so your background is in art history. When did you start to specialize in contemporary art exactly?
Well, I think I was always interested in the way how art of all periods really resonates with us today. And I always felt that artworks give us a window into the zeitgeist of a period. And I felt by trying to understand a society's, a culture's artworks, you can learn something about that culture, about its time, but also about ourselves. And this dialogue between the past and the present was really what fascinated me. And I strove to supplement it with research into the art of the past, be it the Kalmar altar, be it medieval manuscripts, or be it film studies and architecture. I was quite eclectic and very lucky to be able to do that with a common denominator of interest. You
told me you did your master's especially on prints and drawings. Could you just elaborate a bit and explain?
That is correct. At some point, I decided that what I was actually interested in and what I wanted to know more about was works on paper, in particular post 1945 prints and drawings. The development of printmaking is really an interesting part of art history. It's making prints is a collaborative act. You can't just do it by yourself. You need to work in a workshop. You need to work with a master printer. And in being a collective act and a collaborative act, it's also very, very often subversive. There's arguments to be had, information to be exchanged. Print workshops are very often the first places to be closed in the face of an oppressive regime.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And the role of print and printmaking, how it has changed in the past 100, 150 years since the development of photo technology was very important to me. And I was fortunate to be able to contribute a bit to the research into that field.
I asked you about that before, but maybe we'll touch on that again.
I think all art is politic, and I think it's important for us to be participants. And that's what makes art a factor of change and of positive change in the world.
Which printmakers were you actually researching when you did your master's?
A lot of them.
Okay.
Some of them, but some of the ones that got the most attention were actually Joe Tilson,
Okay.
British printmaker, Robert Rauschenberg, who's absolutely seminal, and also Edoardo Paolozzi, British artist, printmaker, sculptor, born 1924, passed away in 2005,
and did all the beautiful mosaics in Tottenham Court Road.
Absolutely. Actually, research and the work of Edoardo Paolozzi has accompanied me throughout my life until now, and I'm still working on research on this artist.
He also, in case people don't know it, if I remember, he did an enormous sculpture outside the British Library.
That is correct.
Right. People can see his work there.
Yeah, Paolozzi is very well known for his so-called Newton after Tottenham Court Road murals. But more than anything, I think he's also been extremely important as one of the key artists in developing screen printing as an art form in its own right. And he, in the 1960s, was incredibly innovative and contributed a lot to the genre.
So that brings me to my next question, which is what brought you to England?
Well, first of all, I think it was actually my son. I'm very lucky to have a son at some point, or I have two sons by now.
Okay.
But at some point, it was very clear you needed to earn money. You wanted to have a job. You wanted to make sure that the family was all right. And I was extremely fortunate by being able to apply for a job at the National Galleries of Scotland in Edinburgh, who were looking for a art historian with knowledge of printmaking, with knowledge of Edoardo Paolozzi, and with an interest in working in the cataloging of the artist's gift that had been given to the National Galleries a couple of years beforehand. So from 2004 until roughly 2010, I spent my time in Scotland as a curator, working on the gift and later the estate of works, cataloging, writing, making displays, making exhibitions, and enjoying a wonderful collection in Scotland.
I think it's interesting that you spent a lot of time on his work, because from my memory of him when I was younger in London and also in Manchester, his prints are really that you kind of in a way, you know, revived his art and brought him back to sort of public attention that you're doing. So that's terrific. So you ended at the National Galleries of Scotland. And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. I mean, museums always have very, very interesting titles for their staff. I started off as a so-called junior curator, which meant that I was about 3,000 works on paper, but also helping with the administration, cataloging, accessioning of roughly maybe 25,000 other objects that were that I and other colleagues were in our care. But it also included then at a later stage when contracts changed, and I was more involved with the print room, taking responsibility of the works on paper from 1818 to the present day. And I was thinking froze right now.
Do they have a conservation? Yes, it's hang on 1 second. You'll be back. We're just waiting for Daniel to come back because that's better. Daniel, I didn't ask you, but do they have a print conservation department up there in Edinburgh?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Do they have a print conservation department? Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The National, yes, I can hear. Galleries of Scotland are really international institutions. They have a wonderful conservation department with fantastic staff, fantastic material research and art historical research. I think the absolutely fantastic works, ranging from early prints and wonderful drawings by Turner, the Turner all the way to some of the most complex contemporary prints.
Fantastic. So you liked Edinburgh, obviously. And did you get to know a lot of the contemporary artists up in Scotland when you were living there? Oh, frozen again.
Scotland is a fantastic place to get to learn about Britain, I think. And I think the art scene in Scotland is, I believe, one of the most important ones in Europe after London. Being at a place like the National, able to work with artists from Glasgow, from Dundee, from Highlands, and also, of course, Edinburgh itself, and being immersed in such a community was a real privilege. And there's fantastic artists there, fantastic that punch well above their weight, and being able to exhibit.
So I'm going to bring up a picture of Paolotti's studio because I know that you've mentioned him already, and here it is. So where is the studio? Has it been rebuilt in the museum?
Yes. So
hang on.
Exactly.
I'm losing your sound again.
The is
right.
Oh. Essentially, the Paolotti's studio at the National Galleries of Scotland is a reconstruction of 5,000 items which the artist gifted to the galleries, and together with assistants, my curatorial colleague at the time, it was assembled into a display that visitors can see on site at any given time, that relates to the surrealist collections in to life, the idea of an artist's studio as a place of making, right there in the middle of the gallery. And
Thank you, Dan. You're back. Hang on, I've lost you again.
My responsibility in relation to the Paolotti's studio.
Right, I can see the little Newton down on the floor there in the studio.
My responsibility was also to develop
works. Wow.
Exhibitions in relation to the studio, and
right.
Exactly. Not all of them works. Some of them were tiny maquettes. Other were personal items, which all contributed to the studio. But all of them were fascinating and tell the story about the person.
And you also mentioned that you did an exhibition with Paul McCarthy, who's a very controversial Los Angeles artist, yes? No, I've lost you here.
I think.
And that you made an
I
exhibition
can
of
hear
his
you.
work. I think his drawings. We mentioned Paul McCarthy. Okay, so can we talk about Paul McCarthy that you did a show with in 2009? What
Yes.
kind of exhibition was it?
The exhibition that I was interested in was essentially a dialogue between the artist studio and our visitors. The artist studio that you bring production space very odd and grotesque ways has a famous film which is called The Painter, and essentially spoofs and makes fun of the myth of the artist. The myth of the artist as by confronting our recreation in the museum of an artist's studio by an actual artist's criticism through the form of video. We put those two those two
here. Okay, checking in.
I think we were able to.
Okay, are you back? Hi, are you back? Anyway, I'll carry on chatting and hopefully you'll come back in a minute. There was also a wonderful, okay. There's lots to talk about and we're just trying to get back in here. This is always the problem. It's lunchtime and everybody's online. Okay. Should we try and carry on? Can you hear me? Can I switch you off and invite you in again, perhaps, Daniel? Re-invite you in, okay? Okay, now I'm going to try and get you back in again, okay? Just stay there and I will re-invite you back in. Okay, just hang on everybody. I'm very sorry about this, but we need to get... Right, I'm inviting Dan back in and I'm hoping that he'll come in 1 second and we'll be able to get this back up and running quicker. There is an issue. Now
I can hear and see you.
That sounds better. I don't know what happened. I apologize to everybody about this. I'm very, very sorry. So Dan, we were just talking about your next exhibition, which was called Photo, Modernity in Central Europe from 1918 to 1985. And I understand that this was a touring show that you collaborated on. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Because I love photography and I'd love to know more.
This was also in my stay at the National Galleries in Scotland. We were working together with the National Gallery of Art in Washington and its fantastic photo curator, Matthew Witkowski.
Right.
who really, he's now at the Institute of Art in Chicago, and is really one of the foremost scholars of photography, and in particular at that time of interwar photography, looking at photography as cultural artifacts to teach us about the perception and conception of modernity. Beautiful show with more than 120 objects of artists from Poland to the Balkans, from the Czechoslovak lands to Germany, and it really made an immense contribution to photography research, and I was very lucky to be able to work on that exhibition.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's now a lot of interest between the overlap between photography and painting, and obviously the V&A have done an exhibition about that, several of them actually. And I remember when you know, there was an exhibition, I think even at the National, where you introduced photography about old master painting, and there was the two lined up together. That was a really wonderful exhibition with Ori Gerstein and all sorts of other really great people.
Since the beginning of photography, there's really been an intense dialogue between the media. Photographers have always looked at paintings, and for the past 150 years, painters have looked more and more in photography. The way that we compose the world around us, be it in photography or in painting, is really a communication between artists and the world. And I think there's going to be interesting things to be learned from each other.
And the Impressionists drew on photography, which I think people forget about, you know, that they were taking photographs outside, taking them back to the studios and developing ideas from that, and portraits and the whole thing. And then Julia Margaret Cameron and photographers like that who were just doing extraordinary, wonderful portraits of these, you know, of artists. And then they would have all these, you know, cross communications. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
And also the other way around. I think the advent of abstraction also meant that artists like David Bomberg, who we will mention later on, were able to really break with the photorealistic tradition of perspective and use action to think about ways of representing the world.
Yeah, and they came from, as you say, those Eastern European photographers, the great ones that were really developing their interest in abstraction and technique.
Including surrealist photography in the Czechoslovak lands, and also in Poland with Artsy or Curator, or being really at the forefront of the development of the medium.
Fantastic. And then lastly, you did a show with Miroslav Balka that I know that the Israel Museum have you know, made wonderful exhibitions with. He's less well known in this country, but I mean, he's certainly well known in Israel. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with working with Balka?
Miroslav Balka is the artist whose work I sincerely admire, because I believe he is uniquely capable of understanding the notions and form in our work ways that is very difficult, very astute, and his sculptures, his prints are really wonderful works and extremely poignant markers of these traumas of history that we still deal with. We were able at the National Galleries in Scotland, when I was there, to buy a print portfolio of his called Entering Paradise. It records the surface of a Vernis etching, the footprints of homeless people in the San Francisco Bay Area. It really was displayed with a sculpture depicting two gas burners And by making this into an installation, a very, very modest scale, it allowed visitors to, in a way, have a hopefully poignant meditation on the fleetingness of life, essentially, but also to come up with a bit of hope and the beauty of art. All of that on a very modest scale, but it was a wonderful project to work on with a wonderful artist.
Fantastic. And then you moved from Scotland. Curator, the Isley Curator, in fact, and head of curatorial studies at the Whitechapel Gallery for many years, and the joint course leader of their masters, their MA in curating the contemporary. Yes.
I absolutely loved it. I think of one of London's, if not the world's greatest led contemporary art spaces. I had wonderful colleagues at the Whitechapel with a fantastic program and a real fire for idea, for tackling critical thinking, for working with artists and trying to understand how the world around works. Curating, which was very hands-on and very enthusiastic in our students. 5 students, and
fantastic.
It was fantastic. I was extremely happy there with a very, very great team, and of course, very inspiring leadership from Yvonne Blaswick, who a lot of us
yes, who was who we interviewed in one of our Women in Art lunches. She's a very old friend of mine. I've known her since her ICA days. It's a very long time ago.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
No, she's great.
Very inspiring person and a great good for the Whitechapel Gallery. I was very privileged that I got to Whitechapel and with this fantastic team and 15 years.
Marvelous.
And is really one of the best art places in the world.
The Max Mara Prize, which is a prize for women artists, and you worked with Andrea Butner, with Laura Provost, with Corinne Swan, and with Emma Hart, who I think a lot of us love as well. So was that a fun thing to do, to work on the prize?
Yeah, it was beautiful. I was very lucky on the Max Mara Art Prize for Women. And it is a very residency in Italy, and then have an exhibition at the Whitechapel Gallery. And it really means that these artists can develop their own practice, get a forum and attention that is extremely helpful. So we hope, at least if the institution does the job well. And shame in the art world relating to religious practices, with Corinne Sorn working on
I think this is Hannah's show, am I right?
What you're seeing right now is actually an exhibition that I did in 2014. This is Hannah Höch. The 1919, well, from the 1920s.
As you were saying, there's always this link. Sorry, Dan, go on. You were saying that there's always the link in your work between working with contemporary and working with historic. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. What I'm very interested in is bridging that gap, thinking about thinking about art and artworks as how we can talk in the present about and how we can learn of history. And Hannah Höch is one of those artists who was most active in the 1920s, but feels incredibly off the moment still.
Sorry, we're going in and out again. Can you hear me? Okay. Can I ask you about you can hear me now? I can't hear you.
Yes.
Hang on. Ah, okay, Daniel, well done. So can I just ask you, finally, at Whitechapel, can I ask you about the Alicia Quadra exhibition, which I know you curated, and I'm a big fan of her work. And I know that she was in Venice recently. She also did an extraordinary installation on the roof of the Metropolitan Museum, which I saw was a huge and beautiful installation. And this piece, which I'm now going to show everybody, was something that you asked her to install in the very large gallery that you come into. So can you explain this work? Because it's very conceptual, and it's a mixture of, as people can see, sculpture, video, all kinds of things.
Yeah,
this
was actually this was a commissioning project that with Alicia called Medium, and Alicia was really interested in ideas of electronic mobile, a film, and a series of sculptures. The electronic mobile consisted of several dozen iPhones hanging in the shape of the star constellation Cassiopeia, and each iPhone was gazing into space and displaying stars. It was the iPhones, as they were rolled on their mobile, actually gave us a view of what the space would look like if the Earth and us as people were not around. So it was non-anthropocentric model of viewing at space. At the same time, Alicia combined mobile and sculpture with the film of an asteroid of the size of the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. And she then, in her final class, she used bronze casts of dinosaur vertebra in biomorphic installation of Henry Moore.
If I remember, it had an extraordinary kind of entrancing quality. It was very meditative. It was beautiful. Well done. I loved it.
There was a sound element to it as well, and I think fantastic installation, and it was wonderful to get to work with Alicia, to be part of the making of a new work by such an accomplished and astute.
Yeah, and you obviously stretched her there. You know, I think you.
Fantastic. She's a fantastic artist and a very, very interesting thinker. And I think the best works and the best installations come as a combination dialogue between a space and institution and the artist.
Exactly. I first got turned on to her work in Munster. Do you remember the work that was in Munster that was of clock pendants that sort of went through the floor and emerged? It was just extraordinary. Yeah, fantastic.
Fantastic work. She has a real gift for using public space in very, very concise and smart ways.
So then, I would just like to say you then moved after these extraordinarily wonderful shows, and you did Giulio Paolini, which he's a very important artist that's been a bit overlooked in this country. Maybe you could just mention a little bit about why you brought him here and what kind of work he was doing.
Giulio Paolini is really one of those in the conceptual art movement that very often doesn't get a lot of exposure because his work is quite demanding in terms of requiring the will gauge with it. It doesn't just you don't just get it by walking past it. You actually have to say, I want to see this homework. And the White Chapel Gallery is one of the institutions their work needs to operate, to function. And brave on behalf of the gallery to work with an artist like Paolini. It's also, I think, a real gift to be with him and to bring this work, his work, that was so influential to so many others. One of the places that can do shows like that.
Lovely. I'm now going to move you from the East End to the West End. And you have done wonderful work there. But I just recall that the National Gallery has a very long history of contemporary art exhibitions, which perhaps not many people know. Starting
with something that's a bit of a... That's
exactly. Starting before the war in 1940 with Augustus John. He was the wonderful. And then there was a large gap when the war was on, because obviously everything in the National Gallery, I remember, was sort of hidden, and it was in bunkers, and they took everything out, obviously. And then the whole program started again in the 70s with, you know, great artists like Hockney and Kittai and Anthony Caro and Hodgkin, of course. So, and then recently there's been Tacita Dean, and then Chris O'Feely and Ed Rouchet. But I would like to ask you about your programs, obviously, that you were connected with at the National Gallery. And I'd like to start with our great favourite of everyone at BFAMI, Rachel McLean. And you did an extraordinary video installation that identity, and concurrent with that, you had the Landseer, the great monarch of the Glen, in another room in the main gallery. And it was a very irreverent and naughty video about English-Scottish relationships. So tell me why did you pick Rachel?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I think maybe the National Gallery is London's best kept secret for contemporary art. At the same time, it has really worked with living artists since its inception in A24, because it has always been the place where artists bring their friends, bring their families, bring their colleagues to talk, look about art, to argue about art, and then to be inspired to make new work. And that is something that we're trying to revive more. This long history of how the National Gallery has contributed to inspire artists to make new work and to have us enjoy it. We wanted to draw and we wanted to give our modern contemporary program more prominence, more articulation. We're actually doing wonderful exhibitions, commissions, and residencies. And Rachel McLean was a dialogue model. The National Gallery was doing an exhibition of the landscape painter Edwin Landseer, who is an English painter who has become known to paint an image that deals with the idea of Scotland. And I felt it was important that we actually have a Scottish in the gallery as well, having worked in Scotland myself. I knew that there are a lot of Scottish artists who have thought very deeply and very, very interestingly, about the question of identity and representation of identity between England and Scotland. Yeah.
Sorry. So, but BFAMI has a very nice link with Rachel, because we bought this film called Spite Your Face, and it's now in the Tel Aviv Museum, and it was shown originally in the Venice Biennale in 2017. You probably saw it, and she represented Scotland at that Biennale, and it was shown in a wonderful church in Venice, installed at the end of a very long nave, and you sort of walked in. But what I love about her work, and presumably it was the same in your film, is that she actually performs all the roles. She uses prosthetics, she changes costumes. I remember in an interview with her, she was saying that she finds in her parents' house and things like that, she sort of draws on all kinds of rubbish to make the installations, and she performs every role.
She is fantastic. Rachel is a real power. She's one of the most professional worked with, at the same time also just damn funny, and has a real acerbic sense of humor. And there she is. Absolutely. We showed the film Lion and the Unicorn by her, which has artists enact the role Queen, and it's really a lyrical take on the way we talk about national identity, and that was of the Scottish independence referendum. And I think I just
I can still
froze
hear
here.
you, but you're not moving. Well,
yes, I can hear you again, Cathy.
I wanted to ask you what
it was an enormous amount of positive feedback. We got a huge amount of positive feedback, especially from younger and international artists. There's always people who are not interested in contemporary art. That's absolutely fine. And the key thing is that you use modern contemporary art, and you have a chance to use it as a lens to learn something new about the world that you're looking at.
Right. And then you did it immediately during that exhibition. But that was also in dialogue with Turner. So you've done Rachel McLean with Landseer, and now Sean Scully with Turner. And did you find that worked well as a kind of conjunction between those artists?
Yeah, I think that was a very successful show with an artist who really took the time to dive deep into the history of the National Gallery. Sean Scully used to come to the National Gallery while he was himself living in London, working as a plasterer, and in his encouraged him to painter himself. That was a poignant and touching exhibition to do with this artist, and I think it was a very successful exhibition and catalog, which
it was very successful. Lots of cues.
That's right. And
I'd like to
my
ask
predecessor,
you... Colin Wiggins, yeah, I know Colin, lovely. Can I ask you about Bomberg now, because he's also a great favourite, and he's an extraordinary wonderful drawings as well, and obviously this work behind here. that looks like a big futuristic painting. Not particularly typical, I think, of his work, but a really strong picture. The exhibition was about. No sound again.
One of the harbingers of action in Britain, and this exhibition was co-curated with can you hear me now?
A little bit.
Can you hear me, Cathy?
Yeah, that's good.
Is the sound on?
Yep, the sound's on. You're sounding good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. No.
A little bit.
It's going in and out. Never mind. It'll catch up.
We'll try it like this.
Let's
see if this makes a difference.
Okay.
Bomberg is really one of the harbingers of abstraction in British art.
No.
We curated this action together with the art historian Richard Cork.
Right.
Bomberg had always said he hates the fat man of the Renaissance, very much distancing himself from old masters. But actually, he loved to take inspiration from works. And in this exhibition, we had the chance of showing our the direct references that Bomberg took from the old masters to develop the most daring about young Bomberg and old masters, a very select of paintings from museums, which were in conjunction with our collection outside, and some selected works from the collection inside the exhibition.
Fantastic. I'd like to now take you to the Hall commission by Bridget Riley.
So I'll see if I can put this down again.
If people haven't seen it,
go. Can you still hear me?
It's massive. Yes, perfectly. It's a massive installation. It's a major commission by the gallery. I'd like to know how this came about and how was it working with one of the great women artists of our time, Bridget Riley. Tell me about this, because it's really extraordinary when you walk into it. No sound.
It is absolutely wonderful. It's a 10 by 20 euro that really opens the gallery and it sets the frame for viewing the National Gallery collection. This is a work that we have been developing with it for a number of years, and I was very lucky to be the one who then got to realize it together with her. She and the National Gallery have a long history. Bridget has been a trustee at the National Gallery. She had an exhibition at the National Gallery, and she actually sketched gallery when she was at the beginning of her career. Very lucky that we get to work with her over a long time, and it was when we approached her it was very clear that she wanted to do it in this size and with a clear reference reference to our collection. The discs that you can see here are inspired by the color theory of John Constable, and the way that artist Constable talked about colors and the weather, including clouds, as messengers of the weather. So here we have an abstract form that becomes an interesting and well, essentially it becomes a messenger of other things, and that is how she describes these works.
Oh, no sound again.
Bridget was absolutely fantastic to work with. She is a consummate professional. She knows exactly. She has a wonderful team that came from all over the world to work with us at the National Gallery to install the piece. It took us 3 weeks to install it.
I remember all the scaffolding and everybody up at the top.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yes.
It took us 3 weeks to install the piece, and Bridget was there. She was climbing the ladders. She was climbing the scaffolding, and she was there making sure everything was done exactly in the right way.
Fantastic. No, we all love her.
It was a big inaugural commission for our new modern and contemporary program at the National Gallery.
Fantastic. Daniel, I'm going to bring you on to ask you about the Artisan Residency with Rosalind Nashashibi, which I know you have currently, and obviously there's been a problem with the COVID and the studios have been shut for several months, as long with the gallery. I know that there's a jury. Can you tell us a little bit about the Artisan Residency program? Because I know, again, that it's been going on for a very long time.
I see that there's a comment about this piece. Yeah, I see there's a comment.
And it's references to art history.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let me bring you on to Rosalind, and I will show a lovely picture of her outside the gallery. So can you explain what the Artisan Residency is about for people that don't know, and how you came to choose Rosalind out of, I'm sure, thousands of artists that you could have picked?
This is a program that we are very, very proud of. We have an artist's studio in the National. We are very proud of the National Gallery's resident program. We are the one. Excellent.
Right.
That's correct.
Freezing again.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
A program that allows a mid-career artist to make use of our studio on site at the National Gallery. Right. It allows, it comes with a 30,000 stipend for the artist. It comes with child care. It comes with free child care for the artist. Yeah. It comes with a publication. It comes
waiting for Daniel to come back in and we'll finish the interview. I'm so sorry. Please bear with me, everybody, and thank you. Hello, Oliver. I can see you in. Hello, Carrie. It's not from my end. I think it's something with the internet. I'm very sorry. But as soon as Daniel signs back in again, hello, Natalie, I will come in with him, and hopefully that will be good. Marin, hello. Lovely to see you live. Just waiting for Daniel. We're nearly at the end of the interview. We're just going to talk a little bit more about the residency program and about the institution and what's happening in the future. So I'm sorry, it's been so difficult to get on. Okay, so we've got a live video, and here we are. Right, Daniel is now on. I'm just waiting. Here we are. And I'm hoping this is going to work better now, because we've had so many issues with the internet. I'm so sorry. Oh, thank heavens. I want to deeply apologize. Nobody has any idea why that suddenly cut off. It's awfully rude, and I'm deeply sorry for that. I really apologize. So we're not going to have an awful long time left now, because we've obviously gone over what people might be able to listen in. So I'd like to just quickly reiterate that I know that you're doing Rosalind Nashashibi as your artist in residence, that she is an absolutely fantastic artist, and we look forward to being able to see her. There she is. And the studio will be reopening, I know, as soon as the National Gallery allows, and people will be able to visit her and to see her work, and to also make sure that they come and see your exhibition of her work when it's all ready. So I would just quickly like to move to your contemporary fellow, who is Nalini Malani.
Correct.
And she is a Pakistani artist, and she's working in with you at the moment as a contemporary fellow. She is interested in politics, in consumerism, in globalization, and she's driven to give voice to the stories of those marginalized by history. Can you explain what a contemporary fellow is, as opposed to the Artisan Residency program?
Of course. Nalini was born in Karachi, but probably considers herself an Indian artist because it was to do with the politics of the time, of course. She is our fellow, which is a novel strand that we have launched that is really giving us the time to develop a completely new exhibition and project with an artist of international caliber and standing. We are working together with a partner museum, not from London. And this year, it's going to be the Holborn Museum in Bath.
Marvelous.
And together with Nalini Malani, the Holborn Museum in Bath, and the National Gallery, we're taking an entire period of 2 years' time to develop a new project in which the fellowship artist is going to delve into the histories and the collections of these two institutions to reassess the way that we think about art, that we think about the making of art, and to really untangle a lot of the forgotten histories and the forgotten stories that Nalini will find in our collections. She is an artist who's extremely well known in the global South, who has had a lot of influence on a lot of artists over the past 50 years of her practice, with tremendously important exposure from the Centre Pompidou and the Museum of Modern Art, many other places. But this will be the first time that an exhibition of Malani of this caliber will happen in the United Kingdom.
Fantastic. And I'm going to just turn on the questions now, just in case anybody wants to send any questions. Okay. There's a huge movement, obviously, with Black Lives Matter. And I'm wondering if the National Gallery in any way has worked with this issue or is intending to do anything that would relate to this subject matter.
It's an absolutely crucial thing that we need to do, and that we need to do more of. The National Gallery has been founded in 1824, of course, before the anti-slavery laws in the 1830s, and there's a lot of our history that reflects the history of Britain, of Europe, of the world, that we need to have a very, very close and very serious look at. There needs to be more representation of the lived experience of artists and of people in the world, and it's our responsibility to do this and do this better. We're trying to do that. We want to do it in the right way. We're doing that with a lot of people and a lot of discussion. We have a lot of work still ahead of us, and I think it's going in the right direction. But also, this needs to be done seriously and not just quickly.
Yes.
Doing things in the right way. It needs to be done with lots of foresight and also the right funds. And we need to do this, and we're working on that. Actually, in just the past couple of weeks, we're very keen to find the right way of discussing the history of enslaved people in relation to our collections, and we need to make sure that we get all the history right, and then we discuss it with open eyes and a critical view towards reality.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know that the collection, the main subject matter, and so that's an issue that obviously you'll have to have. You have a massive collection. You might not be able to acquire more works, but it's certainly something for a future exhibition, perhaps, that you might consider. So we look forward to that. One of the other things I'd like to ask you is about the blockbuster and about your future plans, because I know that you and I have discussed that a little bit. I know that you have a blockbuster coming up, but you're not allowed to disclose it yet. And do you think that there is still a future in museums for these extraordinarily expensive blockbuster shows? You know, how is that going to work when the budgets are so tight?
Oh, I think it's also it's a moral question at some point. Resources that tie that release carbon emissions in a way that is unprecedented, that involve a lot of travel, a lot of waste, and we need to do that better. We need to think about greener exhibitions. We need to think about sustainable exhibitions, and also that means we need to think about more sustainable funding models for our cultural institutions. The wrong kind of spending rather than really sustainability and responsibility. At the same time, a place like the National Gallery is one of the few places that can do the large shows with the really iconic works of the world. So a Leonardo show can be done by only a handful of a Donatello show can only be done. They will always receive large crowds, and we are the forum for that. We need to make these available to a lot of people and to the most amount of people. But to do that in a green way, to do that in a responsible and sustainable, in a smart way, will be the challenge of the next couple of years.
It's the 200th anniversary of the National Gallery. So have you got some projects? Is Gabriella thinking of wonderful things to do to make a big splash?
We have a fantastic director with Cathy who really brings innovation and inspiration to the leadership of the National Gallery, and I think there will be a lot of 24 that will excite people and inspire scholars, artists, and visitors alike.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
so you have to watch this space.
There's a lot of work going
wonderful.
on the book. It's all hands on deck, and we can't wait until we can fully open again. We now have our just opened yesterday, but we can't wait to welcome our visitors back, which also means that I want to invite anyone listening right now to please join us for our wonderful Titian exhibition, which has been extended to the 17th of January of next year. It's the first time in 500 years that we have united the paintings of the so-called poésie in one exhibition. The first time in 500 years they will not be reunited like that again. It's the one opportunity. Please come on down.
And you've got Artemisia coming up, which was postponed as well.
Yeah, I mean, COVID has us all, everyone's schedule has been like this. But we're getting back to it, and we can't wait to see Artemisia and her works at the gallery, and we'll be very, very happy to welcome our visitors for this fantastic show of one of the most interesting artists of the past.
Yeah, and you just acquired a work by her.
We did indeed.
Right? A very important piece. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
It's been restored, and it's will be on display in all its glory.
So I am hoping that we'll be able to come and visit Rosalind in her studio. Perhaps that's something that the BFAMI group can come and do in the future. And
we would love to.
We would like to invite you to Israel.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely.
So
I would be.
We do hope, because we have marvelous museums there, and BFAMI are organizing exhibitions and trips and supporting, as we said in the beginning, lots of wonderful educational programs. And it might be something that, we can talk about in the future and invite you over when you have some time in your busy schedule. But for now, and I apologize for the glitch right in the middle of your discussion with me, I'd like to say a huge thank you, Daniel. You seem to be full of a million projects, and you've got fingers in lots of pies. And the National Gallery is, of course, everyone's favorite museum here, and we look forward to coming in and sharing, the gallery with you, and coming to see the Artisan residence, and looking at the 2 new exhibitions that are on display. And I just want to say, on behalf of everyone at BFAMI, it's been an absolute joy to have you with us today. And thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having